was well over 100 pieces of contraband.
Drugs, money, weapons, hidden away at a facility for juvenile offenders and never turned over to police. They had to get a search warrant to go inside a government agency. It sounds crazy. What that warrant revealed about the secrets hidden inside Green Hill.
Can I give you my wife's phone number? Tell her I love her.
Desperate calls for help from those in the front lines.
To have those 3 young men die at such an early age, with a product that we've got that could have saved them.
We show you the piece of equipment that could save lives but isn't available to wildfire crews.
And I'm banging on the window saying, help, help.
17s escape Echo Glen's Children's Center and leave a staff member injured and a community rattled. What did staff know about the planned breakout beforehand?
There were serious procedural breakdowns that we should not miss.
Our investigations dig into a decade of issues at the facility, including another breakout less than a month ago.
Seeking the truth.
Hey, Governor Inslee, it's Susanna Frame from King. How are you?
Getting results.
We were wrong and we apologize.
Tonight, we look back at our top investigations of 2023 and the change they've enacted in Washington state. Good evening, and thank you for joining us for a look back at some of the most impactful stories of 2023 from the King 5 investigators. And thanks for choosing King 5. I'm Susanna Frame.
And I'm Chris Ingalls. In 2023, we challenged those in power and sought answers to questions that some didn't want to answer. Tonight, we begin at the Green Hill School in Chehalis after contraband was confiscated at the maximum security lockup that holds juvenile offenders.
But instead of turning it over to authorities, state officials kept years of illegal activity a secret.
Undercover drug detectives on a mission. The Lewis County Joint Narcotics Task Force, JNET, enters a building in search of illegal drugs in this body camera footage obtained by King 5 through a public records request.
We have to get it out of the locker, put it in a bag.
It wouldn't be that unusual, except this place is a state government building, the Green Hill School. How common is it to get a search warrant against another government agency?
I've never been a part of that in my 30-plus years in law enforcement.
Centralia Police Chief Stacy Denham was there in August.
Mainly what we're looking for is drugs include random pills, Danny bars, fentanyl, THC.
When JNET handed the school superintendent a court-ordered search warrant.
We'd gotten a tip that there were some evidence lockers that contained large amounts of contraband.
Green Hill is Washington's maximum security facility for juvenile offenders, serving sentences for things like rape, murder, and robbery. It's no place for drugs or weapons. Was a search warrant really the only way to go and get this stuff?
Well, no, they could have voluntarily given it to us.
But they didn't.
But they didn't.
Why wouldn't the State Department of Children, Youth, and Families, which runs juvenile facilities, cooperate? We took that question right to the top. They had to get a search warrant to go inside a government agency. It sounds crazy.
Law enforcement did raise some issues. I think there was some miscommunication that occurred that was really unfortunate.
Washington Governor Jay Inslee and DCYF dispute that there is a lack of cooperation with police and that a search warrant was even necessary.
Yeah, it's unusual. There was some miscommunication. If they called a little higher in the food chain, I think that would have got resolved.
But here's the thing. The King 5 investigators obtained this letter sent directly to Governor Inslee by Lewis County leaders 2 months before JNET sought a search warrant. They described Green Hill drug overdoses, security concerns, and employee misconduct that was not reported to police. A reply came weeks later. The governor's office is declining to refer this matter to the Attorney General's office for further investigation. They felt like they were brushed off.
Well, I can assure you that we have made improvements there, in part because some of these concerns have been raised.
That is not the case. Nothing has been corrected, and which is incredibly frustrating.
If you want to unlock them all.
The search warrant confirmed JNET's suspicions.
Yeah, that thing is jam full. Holy smoke.
Lockers in the back of Green Hill's laundry room overflowed with contraband seized over the years.
We found stuff in those lockers that's dating back to 2017.
Why would they still be holding on to it?
That's a great question. We don't know. It was well over 100 pieces of contraband. By statute, they're not allowed to hold on to it. They are supposed to turn that over to law enforcement.
Police say they were never called by Green Hill administrators as staff seized blue fentanyl pills, weapons like the shank, and sneakers with drugs hidden in the shoe tongue. Detectives wheeled away a cart full of bagged evidence, over 100 felony cases from the last 6 years that were never recorded to police, according to documents. It's not just the juvenile offenders inside this facility. Law enforcement also has concerns about crooked staff. Most employees are honest, and police say their best source of Green Hill tips. But others have been arrested for contraband smuggling, having sex with students, and 2 have links to drive-by shootings.
When I first got there, I was in like regular population, but then I started getting into a lot of fights, so that was in the hole the whole time.
This is 20-year-old Daniel Racinos last year, in custody again 2 weeks after his release from Green Hill. He was accused of firing shots randomly in this Centralia neighborhood from behind the wheel of a car owned by Leandra Calhoun. She was his counselor in the maximum security unit at Green Hill.
They knew exactly and had set up an agreement when this person got out that this is where this person was going to go. They were going to meet up, and this is something that I would say is completely unacceptable.
We tried to reach Calhoun, who served prison time for robbery 10 years before she was hired by Green Hill. She told police she'd been riding in her car with Racinos when he pointed a handgun at her and stole her car. She told police she had nothing to do with the shooting, and through a lawyer, she declined to comment. The case shows how the problems inside Green Hill can spill out into the community.
Seen a bullet hole right there in the window, about right here.
Bill Kale can vouch for that. He heard gunshots and the next morning found a bullet hole in his window. Police say it's a stray round fired by Daniel Racino last year from his former Green Hill counselor's car.
Obviously, if they're not, doing their job over there, they need to, get it taken care of.
4 years ago, King 5 exposed hundreds of assaults in Green Hill, many of them on staff, that were not reported to authorities. It's a pattern of Green Hill administrators keeping their secrets behind the razor wire fence.
And it is a huge problem that is being continually ignored by everybody, it appears.
I'm confident going forward this is going to get taken care of.
Both the governor's office and DCYF dispute that any law was broken by Green Hill holding on to that evidence. But since our story aired in November, the top Republican in the state Senate, John Braun of Chehalis, has called for an investigation.
But Chris, we did see in the story the police chief saying that's against the law. I think he said that.
Yeah.
So can they face charges?
The police chief says that detectives are investigating it, but he says charges are unlikely because there have been leadership changes, employee turnover, and things like that that make it kind of messy to prove a criminal case there.
Okay. Thanks, Chris. As wildfire seasons grow longer, hotter, and more dangerous here in the Pacific Northwest, we found there's a piece of safety gear known to save lives that's not being used by firefighters here in Washington.
And this year, we met a man who's made it his life's mission to get that safety gear to all firefighters after he lost his little brother while working the fire lines.
When you're asked to go to the local dentist and get all of his dental records, the news isn't going to be good. And here it is, almost 30 years later, but I feel it like it was yesterday.
Tonight, we look back at our series, Saving Firefighters. This is what it looks like when you're inside a bulldozer, trapped by flames in a wildfire burnover, when a wall of fire scorches right over you.
911, your emergency.
I'm in a dozer on Buenaventura up by Lake Avenue. All the windows got blown out.
The dozer operator is desperate and dials 911 from inside his cab.
I can't last too long here.
Okay, sir, I need you to get out of there, okay?
I can't. It's all on fire around it.
The frantic call comes during the chaos of what's known as the car fire in Redding, California. It was 5 years ago, and the state of California had never seen anything like it. 170-mile-per-hour winds, creating a fire tornado.
I don't know how long it can last.
We're going to get someone out there as soon as possible if we can, okay?
Before hanging up, the firefighter asked the 911 operator to call his wife.
Can I give you my wife's phone number?
Telescope?
This is that dozer operator today, Don Andrews, alongside his wife and grandkids. Don made it out of the burnover with barely a scratch on him. Was there a point where you thought, I'm not getting out of this alive?
Oh, absolutely. I thought I was done for. When I had talked to the 911 operator,
2 firefighters working near Andrews didn't survive. This is a memorial for Fire Inspector Jeremy Stoke, who died in his truck. Don Smith died in his dozer. In that vicious firestorm, Andrews used a piece of safety equipment the others did not. What are called fire barrier curtains, made of multiple layers of aluminum that Velcro to your windows when you're trapped. The curtains can withstand 2,800 degrees, the same temperature as the very hottest wildfires. In this test in Australia, an engine equipped with curtains is pummeled by direct flames. You can see the burn scars on the outside, but inside, nothing is damaged. What do you think about those fire curtains?
oh, saved my life. I'm 100% sure.
This is just a sample of where wildland firefighters have died in their trucks, dozers, and excavators, including 3 young men working on the 2015 Twisp River fire here in central Washington. After their brush truck veered off the road, a wall of fire raced over their vehicle. They didn't have fire curtains to deploy.
It was really heartbreaking to have those 3 young men die at such an early age with a product that we've got that could have saved them. And get that into place first.
Jim Roth of Los Angeles is the engineer who's created fire barrier curtains that have worked every single time they've been deployed. He started his research after a deadly Colorado wildfire in 1994. 14 firefighters died trying to use their fire shelters in a burnover, including a 29-year-old smoke jumper from Idaho, Roger Roth, Jim Roth's little brother.
I was very, very just angry, just really angry with how could he be taken away at such a young age. And
the loss of Roth's brother led to the development of his curtains, saving the lives of about 24 firefighters.
Life's precious.
Don Andrews is one of them.
And we're good friends today. It's great to have new friends, right? But particularly friends like that have told me I thought I was going to die, and I got to go home and see my family.
Roth's curtains are installed on engines and dozers all over the world: California, Wisconsin, Texas, in Canada, Australia, and South Africa. But they're not required or commonly used in the state of Washington. Do you think that the curtain should be mandatory?
Absolutely.
None of the rigs used by the State Department of Natural Resources has fire curtains installed. DNR wouldn't do an interview, but in a statement, officials said they could create a false sense of security and lead certain operators to proceed in unsafe conditions.
I think it's crazy. I think it's just ludicrous.
To a survivor like Don Andrews, battling a wildfire without curtains is an unnecessary gamble in an already treacherous profession.
It'd be ludicrous to ever even show up on a fire without curtains.
What are your people worth?
Yeah. What are they worth? How easy is it going to be to replace them? But it only takes once to make you a believer.
Installing fire curtains costs between $3,000 and $4,000. That's just a fraction of the cost of a dozer, which is about $125,000. But of course, no amount of money could ever make up for the loss of a human life.
Absolutely not. Now, outside of those fire curtains, Susanna, you reported that Jim Roth is on another mission to improve what are called fire shelters. Those are the portable tent-like blankets that can be used as a last resort.
Yeah, most of us have seen those on TV before. And actually, Jim Roth developed what his testing shows is a much better fire shelters. It can save more lives than what the U.S. Forest Service was using then and is still using to this day. So Jim Roth says his work isn't done.
That's the only thing left in life that I have to do, and that's getting a fire shelter that's really going to save lives and work in every wildfire.
You know, it's been 30 years, about 30 years since Jim Roth designed that fire shelter. So now he says it's pretty much out of date. There's new technology, new materials, but he's still committed, he says, to making a better fire shelter.
Dashcam video shows a grinding automobile crash on I-5 through Seattle that injured a Washington State Patrol trooper.
Though the State Patrol's own crash expert determined the trooper was at fault, the other driver was blamed and was facing trial for it.
King 5's questions about this case led to multiple state investigations and a sergeant being pulled from duty. This is our investigation at fault on the freeway. The midnight hour on the busiest roadway in the Pacific Northwest, Interstate 5 through Seattle. Last August, a rookie state patrol trooper assisted other officers up the highway who were pulling off the shoulder after a DUI stop. The trooper attempted to halt traffic with what's called a rolling slowdown. Then, his patrol car was smashed by a fully loaded semi-truck, as seen here on dash camera. Responding troopers found the crushed vehicle propped up on a Jersey barrier. They freed Trooper Firawat Apposite, a patrol cadet in his first months on the road.
You okay, buddy? Yeah.
Investigators quickly focused on the driver of the semi-truck, who was making his usual overnight run from Tukwila to Everett, carrying a load of U.S. mail. Troopers said the truck driver did not reduce his speed when he saw flashing lights, according to reports we got through a public records request to the State Patrol. And they wrote it was apparent that Trooper Apposite checked lanes prior to making lane changes before the crash. Most disturbing is what happened right before this field sobriety test. Not one, but 3 troopers said they could detect the odor of intoxicants coming from the truck driver. They implied he could be drunk. Important question. Did you drink any alcohol that night?
I don't drink.
What do you mean you don't drink?
I don't drink at all. I'm diabetic.
Do you know what the troopers wrote about you at the scene?
No.
That they smelled intoxicants when they were near you.
Well, that's extremely funny because I don't drink and I haven't drank in decades.
Veteran truck driver Sean Fouch of Snohomish passed the field sobriety test and a portable breathalyzer test.
Here's an alcohol. He said he had last drink 30 years ago and he blew 0-0.
Right after the crash, a witness told Trooper Apposite he saw him cut off the truck driver.
I was doing the road slow down. I saw the road slow down.
And soon, Fouch's company sent investigators this video from his truck's dash cam. It shows the trooper moving across all lanes of traffic to the right shoulder.
Because there was officers on the right-hand side, I thought he was shooting across the freeway to try and get on that side of the freeway to get up to the officers. And then all of a sudden, he does a U-turn on the freeway and comes back in front of me.
Fouch moved his truck 3 lanes to the left to give the trooper room, but the video shows Apposite turning suddenly in front of Fouch's 40-ton truck.
It's not going to stop fast.
Did you think this whole thing was over after that night?
Yeah. I mean, because in my mind, it was the officer's fault because he didn't take due care and precaution.
But months later, this citation for negligent driving arrived in the mail. It's no small thing for someone like Fouch, who holds a commercial driver's license.
It's extremely serious because they can and will revoke your CDL. I mean, so now I have no way to make a living. I feel that they're trying to cover up the fact that their officer was in the wrong.
This might seem like the kind of thing that happens all the time, right? People argue over who is at fault in a car crash. But in this case, investigating troopers were ignoring one very important piece of evidence that was coming from their own expert.
Just for the record, this is kind of unusual, but I'm definitely on your client's side for this case. I don't think an infraction should have been written.
That's an audio recording of the State Patrol collision tech, a crash expert called out to investigate on the night of the accident. The tech agreed to a recorded phone call with Fouch's attorney, Lucas McQuethy.
During the interview, he did come right out and say it, that my client was not driving negligently, that he advised against citing him with a ticket.
I, in fact, went to the lieutenant and instructed them not to write a ticket here because once I heard that was going to happen, I kind of went to bat for your client.
They all work with the officer that was involved in the accident, and what it appears to me is that they all circled the wagons around him and are trying to insulate him from any possible backlash.
Over the months, King County prosecutors rejected McQuethy's repeated demands to drop the negligent driving charge in the face of such damaging evidence. At the same time, the State Patrol told prosecutors it launched a more advanced review of the crash, shopping for a second opinion most favorable for the prosecution, according to records we obtained from the county prosecutor. Dashcam video shows Trooper Apposite walking away from the accident. But listen to this voicemail Sergeant T.J. Johnson left with the prosecutor months later.
This is an accident that involved a trooper who was pretty seriously injured and who has subsequently had a number of surgeries.
The sergeant is pressing the prosecutor's office to push this case forward.
When King 5 approached me about this originally, the phrase that was used, hey, it sounds like the State Patrol's being heavy-handed. We were. Sounds like the State Patrol circling the wagons to protect their own. We did.
State Patrol spokesperson Chris Loftus admits the patrol's conduct in this case is indefensible.
The infraction should have never been issued.
Loftus says after King 5's call last week, investigations are underway.
We have an internal review going on. It's been ordered by the chief. We're investigating every component of this from the highest level.
What would you say to the driver of that truck?
We're being criticized rightfully on this. I can't be any clearer than that. We were wrong and we apologize.
After our questions about this case, the King County Prosecutor's Office dismissed the charge that Fouch faced for 8 long months. We wanted to know why that took so long. There's the argument out there the prosecutors are just rubber stamping whatever law enforcement wants.
Sure.
What do you say to that?
We're not just rubber stamping things. That's why we subpoenaed Trooper Arata, because we wanted to hear from him in front of the court, to hear him say, I don't think this is an infraction. And once we were able to confirm that, that's when the case was dismissed.
The prosecutor's office says it wanted to be sure that the collision tech had seen all the dashcam videos before they made their decision. But Susanna, it doesn't really seem like the prosecutor's office had much oversight in this case.
You know what I remember? Shortly after your story aired, you were getting a lot of phone calls and emails saying, hey, Chris, we're starting this investigation because of your story, and this one, and this one. So did anything ever come of all that?
Yeah, there was a lot of things going on, you're right. The sergeant at the scene that night, T.J. Johnson, was taken off road patrol. It's been several months since then, but I'm told that these internal investigations could wrap up any day.
May 2023, that's when 7 teenagers assaulted a staff member at Echo Glen's Children's Center. After that, they stole a vehicle and broke out.
King 5 investigator Taylor Mir-Fendereski uncovered what was going on behind the scenes in Snoqualmie.
My investigation found leaders at the state's child welfare agency were warned about a planned escape days before a group of teens broke out. I dug into why the people in charge failed to stop it.
I need you to head over to Echo Glen. Kids have escaped and assaulted a staff member.
Okay. Security guard Megan Krause is the staff member police were talking about on the radio. Here you can see the bruises on her face. She also suffered a concussion that night on the job at Echo Glen Children's Center in Snoqualmie. She told detectives about it in a recorded interview.
And he starts freaking pummeling me, just punch after punch after punch.
Police records show Krause was supervising 14 teenagers at the state-run juvenile detention center in May, when half of them, 7 boys, ambushed her, stole her car, and then broke out.
I think I was hit over 40 times.
Can you briefly tell me where you were hit?
In the head and the face.
According to charging documents, this wasn't a last-minute idea, but a carefully planned attack. Police photos detail how the kids deceived their guard. They left belongings on their beds to make it look like they were sleeping. Instead, they were hiding in the bathroom, making it possible to sneak up on Krause and lock her in one of their cells.
And I'm banging on the window saying, help! Help!
Gonna do an area check around where her car was taken.
Police video from inside the facility shows the chaotic aftermath.
And I don't want to get out by myself if they're still out there.
Juveniles with violent criminal backgrounds
County Sheriff's Office
on the loose,
Trying to jump the fence. We want to get over.
including boys with convictions for murder.
There were serious procedural breakdowns that we should not miss.
Russ Hunter is the secretary of the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF. It's the state agency that runs Echo Glen.
The biggest challenge is the lack of physical security on the campus.
DCYF has long described the facility as a therapeutic environment, one surrounded by wetlands instead of a fence.
It was designed decades ago.
But it didn't just come down to physical shortfalls. Our investigation revealed before the 7 boys escaped, senior Echo Glen administrators knew a plan was in the works, they were tipped off.
You've been hearing rumors for like the last 3 weeks.
Yeah. Police records obtained by King 5 show that just 2 days before the boys broke out, an Echo Glen official warned police a teenager might attempt to escape. Echo Glen leaders got suspicious after a person on the outside was seen waving a gun at the front gate, and a parent called with a tip that an escape plot was brewing. The superintendent warned staff to be on the lookout. But on the night of the escape, employees like this rehabilitation officer complained the facility was critically short-staffed, with only one security guard and a trainee patrolling the campus.
We have gone round and round with the administrators, telling them, you need to get more staff, we don't have the ability to deal with this, blah, blah, blah. They just, ignore us as usual.
Given that this was a possibility, why didn't you have more staff on duty that night or do more?
So, ma'am, if I had 400 more people on staff that night and something had happened, I'd get the same question. Well, why didn't you have 600? We had unsubstantiated information that maybe something would happen.
But those tips weren't the only warnings about Echo Glen's security problems. Escapes at Echo Glen have been a problem dating back more than a decade. And one of the convicted killers who escaped in May,
Hi, dispatch personnel, call me PD.
Had done it before in nearly the same way.
They stole a vehicle, they stole a phone, they assaulted the nurse to get those 2 items.
That was almost a year and a half earlier, in January 2022. Timothy Hernandez Ebanks was one of 5 teens who broke out of Echo Glen, accused of assaulting 2 staff members, locking them in separate cells, and stealing this car.
How could you allow this to happen not once, but twice?
I'm not happy about it happening once or twice. And I think the constructive response is, all right, you have a situation, what do you do? And how do you cause this to not happen again?
Hunter says his team has made improvements to prevent future problems, like hiring extra security, beefing up training, boosting pay, requiring staff to lock up personal property like car keys, and they're beginning work on a multi-million-dollar fence that he expects will be done sometime next year.
Why was that not done in January of 2022? This should have been handled years ago.
Mike Yastramski is the president of the union that represents workers at Echo Glen.
They're concerned for their safety.
He says DCYF bosses have made years-long promises of a safer facility for youth and staff, but repeatedly failed to deliver.
Because there still has not been the true dedication needed to prevent it again. We're still completely understaffed. The physical plant is still nowhere near where it needs to be.
We asked Hunter why he didn't take more action sooner.
The answer is we didn't react adequately quickly 22 months ago to make enough change in there, and we're reacting today.
Why is it taking so long for a fence to actually be built?
This is not like call, whatever the first fencing company in the Yellow Pages is. It's a secure fence that you can't climb. It's in a wetlands, so it has permitting. We are very focused on building that as fast as possible. It has our full attention getting it done.
All of the teens who escaped were caught, and 4 of them were charged with felonies as adults. The victim, Megan Krause, is still not back to work. And there's been a big development since we aired our story in October. A month later, in late November, 3 teens escaped from Echo Glen again. The King County Sheriff's Office says they were arrested the same night, and DCYF says in this incident, no staff members were hurt.
Taylor, let's talk about another investigation of yours earlier this year that got some great results, actually led to a new state law.
That's right. The law is now called Kimberly Bender's Law, and it creates harsher penalties for jail guards who sexually abuse inmates. It's a direct result of my investigation that showed how a former Forks jail guard who sexually assaulted 4 women in the jail spent just 13 months in prison, all because the state set lighter penalties for corrections officers compared with civilians. Kimberly Bender's Law is named after a 23-year-old Quileute woman who took her own life after reporting that her guard sexually harassed and stalked her. Governor Jay Inslee signed the law in March with Kimberly Bender's parents by his side.
I hope it protects so many other women.
Kimberly Bender's Law took effect in July.
This year, we looked into Washington State's reputation as an environmental leader.
But the King 5 investigators found the state is failing to hit many of its environmental goals.
Not only that, we also found it doesn't appear state leaders want us to know about that. Washington State, we're the poster child for environmental excellence.
We're the first generation to feel the sting of climate change.
In 2019, Governor Jay Inslee ran for president on the platform.
Defeat climate change. Climate change is real. Defeating climate change. The demon of the climate crisis.
But here at home, the King 5 investigators have found Washington isn't meeting many of the state's identified environmental goals. State records show over the last decade, we're recycling less, not more. Greenhouse gas emissions from transportation, the state's biggest carbon polluter, are up, not down. And so are overall carbon emissions, despite a state law requiring a reduction.
A lot of areas were failing badly.
Todd Myers is the environmental director at the Washington Policy Center, a conservative think tank.
Critical that state government and politicians live up to their promises and meet those goals so that the people of the state of Washington get what they voted for, get what they're paying for. That's critical.
The state is meeting some environmental goals, including the number of registered electric vehicles like this one. The governor set a goal of 50,000 by 2020. We've smashed that with about 150,000 on Washington roads right now. On this one, the state is not leading by example. 2 years ago at a UN climate summit in Scotland, the governor announced a bold step, an executive order mandating 100% of the state-owned fleet of vehicles be electric by 2035. His office sent out this press release touting the move to help slash carbon emissions. But a new state report shows Washington agencies are way off track and unlikely to meet that goal.
It's challenging to do it, but it's very important that we follow through on our commitments because the climate doesn't care what we say, it cares what we do. This is a delivery van. This probably gets maybe 14 miles to the gallon.
Matthew Metz is the founder of Cultura, a nonprofit dedicated to eliminating gasoline use in the U.S.
And they're asking the private sector to make a lot of change for the climate, which needs to be done, but the state also really needs to do it.
My name is Mandeep Connell, and I'm a director of Results Washington.
When Inslee came into office 10 years ago, he created a state agency, Results Washington, to set, measure, and publicize state goals such as environmental targets.
And the intent was results-driven government.
State government expert John Bernard was the governor's advisor in setting up Results Washington.
The purpose of it was to get focused on measurable improvement. Measure and see if things are working, set targets.
To actually prove if the state's doing better.
Right.
Prove it.
Right. We're spending a lot of money. Does that money get what we're trying to get done?
But over the years, Results Washington has watered down the results. They've scrubbed most of the environmental goals and measurements from their website. Instead, it now features pages of state reports, links to federal information, graphs, maps, and spreadsheets.
I think it's a lost opportunity. If you are wanting to be results driven and you don't keep score, it's literally impossible to know if you're doing well, making progress. It's literally like playing basketball without keeping score.
The director of Results Washington sent us a statement saying they changed course to make data collection more effortless and timely, and they're evaluating their process to make it easier to access all the information at first glance. Can you tell by looking at this if the state is meeting its goals? No. On a Capitol Hill sidewalk, we tested the site out with citizens. This is Results Washington. How are we doing in meeting our goal?
I mean, it doesn't really say anything about goals.
You see, I'm just not, like there's so many numbers.
No one we spoke with understood how the state stands on environmental goals. From looking at this website, can you tell what the goal is for our greenhouse gas emissions?
No, not at all.
A lot of numbers.
A lot of numbers. No information about where we're going with it.
We wanted to ask Governor Inslee about the missed targets and Results Washington. His office turned us down twice. Hey, Governor Inslee, it's Susanna Frame from King. How are you? So we caught up with the governor at a public event in October. Sir, I've been trying to organize an interview with you to talk about just a quick one, about our state's climate policies and our targets. And as you know, most of them haven't been met. And so I'm just curious. But I've tried, and
Good.
I've been told
no. Can we get an interview with her? She wants to talk about the climate policy.
Okay.
Can we arrange that? Yeah, let's do that. So we sit down and have
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
That would be great, Governor.
Great,
Thank you. Despite that commitment for an interview, it didn't happen. Inslee's office said he was too busy and that King 5 was off the mark by not focusing on the governor's climate policy wins. Critics say policy is one thing, results and being transparent about them are another.
Government exists to help make our world a better place. If I don't keep score, how do I know if I made a difference? And we need them to make a difference. We need the accountability, not just for the people who work in the state, but who govern and who make the laws. They need to be accountable.
Since that story first aired, we heard back from the governor's office. His press secretary says, yes, Governor Inslee does want to talk to me. Right now, we're trying to find a time to schedule that sit-down interview.
And Susanna, your environmental investigations also took you to a federal level.
That's right. We found that one of the federal agencies charged with protecting the environment has been polluting it for decades. It's the U.S. Forest Service. The agency is under fire for dropping toxic chemicals into waterways and killing fish, including endangered salmon. You've most likely seen this dramatic image on TV before. The Forest Service dropping a bright red spray from an aircraft. It's fire retardant. The Forest Service says it's one of their most important tools to slow the progression of a fast-moving wildfire. But when retardant lands in water, it goes from a tool to a toxin, killing fish like these steelhead in 2009 in a creek in Santa Barbara. Hundreds of juveniles were wiped out by an accidental drop of fire retardant. 2 accidental drops happened here in the Omak Creek on the Colville Indian Reservation. That was 20 years ago. The retardant killed thousands of steelhead, an endangered salmon species.
It's heartbreaking.
Vertus Campbell is a member of the Colville Indian tribe who lives just yards away from Omak Creek, an historical fishing ground for the Colvilles. In 2001 and again in 2003, the Forest Service inadvertently dropped retardant into the water, according to the U.S. Department of Fish and Wildlife, causing catastrophic environmental harm.
And that's what we're working for, to get all the fish to come back that way, because that's our heritage, and that's what we do. And that's the big thing in our life.
And so when you hear about a fish kill by a government agency,
it's sad.
The Forest Service invented fire retardant in the 1950s and for 70 years kept quiet about how often it was getting dumped into water and killing fish. Other polluters, like businesses, cities, and counties, have to report what and how much pollution they're putting into waterways. And federal law, the Clean Water Act, mandates they get an EPA permit to do so, to make sure they're not hurting wildlife. But not the Forest Service. For years, they argued they don't need a permit. In 2011, they told the public and the EPA they keep a 300-foot buffer zone around rivers and lakes that ensures retardant wouldn't be discharged into water, so a permit isn't required.
They look at this firefighting as a war where it doesn't matter how much collateral damage they cause.
Andy Stahl is executive director of a nonprofit that sued the Forest Service last year for allegedly violating the Clean Water Act. It turns out a 300-foot buffer zone isn't always cutting it. Legal action a decade ago forced the Forest Service to start tracking how often their drops miss the target. And last year, they reported those numbers for the first time ever.
I was blown away that the Forest Service's error rate was so high.
From 2012 to 2019, they dropped retardant into or near water 459 times, totaling 760,000 gallons. We found that includes 45 drops in the Northwest, including waterways in the Okanagan-Wenatchee and Gifford-Pinchot National Forests.
And here we've got the agency charged with protecting that water actually being the biggest polluter of the water out there.
The Forest Service declined an interview request, but sent a statement saying, "We believe retardant can be and has been delivered without compromising public health and the environment, and that they're continually working to improve formulations to minimize potential adverse impacts."
We are incredibly careful and precise in our use of fire retardant.
In March, the Forest Service deputy chief testified in a congressional hearing that retardant is key for their success in fighting wildfires.
The use of fire retardant is a critical wildfire suppression tool that we will continue to use appropriately and widely to protect communities from the threats of wildfire.
To look into alternatives for those toxic chemicals, we traveled to Chico, California to meet a team who's researched and developed possible options, a company called Green Fire. In August, the Chico Fire Department demonstrated how they use their products. It's the only fire suppression line listed as meeting USDA standards for being safe enough to even use near food production.
We know we have a product with great efficacy that does not harm the environment.
In 2021, the Green Fire founders got a meeting with the Forest Service top brass to talk about trying out non-toxic alternatives. What was the response?
Not much of a response at all. It was pretty much dismissed from the beginning.
It's unclear why the agency wouldn't discuss another option, one that wouldn't kill steelhead and salmon already on the brink of extinction. We do know use of the current formula is going up. Federal records show in 2012, the Forest Service dropped 8 million gallons of retardant on wildfires. In 2020, the amount shot up to 21 million gallons.
Water is so precious. We hear about it constantly on the West Coast. So you'd think you would take every measure to protect that for the future.
This spring, a federal judge ruled that yes, the Forest Service is breaking the law, violating the Clean Water Act, and the agency needs to get a permit. But that could take up to 3 years. In the meantime, the court is allowing them to keep using retardant.
Everything that they throw in the river or the creek, it's not good for them.
People like Vertus Campbell from Omak hope, while doing so, the Forest Service thinks about them.
It's been hard.
And their water. How would you summarize what salmon and salmon species like steelhead mean to you and mean to other members of the Colville tribe?
It's like life. I mean, that's what brings life to us. Every stream on this reservation is very important. That's our life.
He's so sick, and it's not getting any better.
Last month, the King 5 investigators revealed workers at a King County landfill are worried that on-the-job exposure to a highly toxic chemical has harmed their health. At the Cedar Hills Regional Landfill, King County has been dealing with a years-long problem of too much arsenic. The levels are so high that the county has repeatedly violated rules to protect the environment and the public. It's led to multiple fines and a legal battle, as our Taylor Mirfendereski found out.
It hasn't been resolved. Why is that?
It's easy for arsenic to show up in the landfill. It's hard to get it back out.
Records show a King County consultant did its own sampling and found the landfill's arsenic levels on one day in 2020 were 40 times higher than the federal limit for what's considered hazardous waste. Now, multiple employees, including a King County truck driver and a civil engineer, are accusing their bosses of not telling them the truth about potential health risks.
Is there a public health risk currently to your employees?
No.
And how confident are you in that?
I'm as confident as I can be.
Leaders at the landfill recently told employees they've heard their concerns and they've hired a specialist to help monitor exposures.
As we look ahead to the November 2024 election, we bring you the latest installment from the Fraud Crusade. The series began in September 2022, digging into allegations of voter fraud and elections incompetence.
Tonight, our focus is in Mason County, where Steve Dunkel, who's admitted he doesn't trust elections, is now in charge of them.
After refusing to speak with me a year ago, I sat down with him once he took office to hear the big changes he has in store for his new position as Mason County's elected auditor. In fact, I tried to contact you. You didn't call me back. You didn't talk to us then. Why?
Don't take it personally.
And why are you talking to me now?
Well, I'm in office now, and I owe that to you as a member of the media.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The newly elected auditor of Mason County is critical of media coverage.
You can't believe everything you read about me in the newspaper.
Just as much of the news coverage has been critical of him. Are you an election denier? Is that fair?
I don't even know what people mean by that. A term that's intended to be derogatory or demeaning.
Did President Trump win the election? Because I think you're an election denier if you believe that Trump won the popular vote, let's say. Are you in that category?
Chris, I'm focused on what's happening here in Mason County. People can make their own conclusions.
Why did the voters choose you?
The elections belong to the people, and I wanted to do my part in terms of transparency and integrity.
Steve Dunkel, a Republican newcomer, won November's auditor's race by 360 votes over Patty McGuire, a Democrat with 2 decades of elections experience.
I really don't have aspirations for politics per se.
Dunkel is a 61-year-old Boeing retiree. His retirement plans took a sharp turn in the months after President Trump's defeat in 2020.
Your registration databases are where you're getting hacked. That's where you're losing your elections.
Dunkel was inspired at this election integrity hearing in Skagit County in 2021. Keynote speaker Douglas Frank claimed that his calculations proved Democrats stole the election. His science and conclusions have been roundly discredited by experts, but not by Steve Dunkel.
I thought the presentations were well done. I thought they were compelling.
So, Dunkel founded the Mason County Voter Research Project. Armed with voter registration records, citizen volunteers went door to door to test the accuracy of the voter rolls and uncover irregularities or even fraud in the state's vote-by-mail system. Their final report said they uncovered 239 voter anomalies in Mason County.
You have my report.
Yeah. I go to this page that shows some vacant lots. I mean, your crew just went to the wrong address. They went to the wrong street.
And so that can happen. So remember, the canvassing volunteers for the Voter Research Project, they're not trained investigators.
Our Fraud Crusade reports last year showed Dunkel's team visited the wrong addresses and incorrectly claimed that voters illegally registered at vacant lots instead of home addresses.
They need to do more research, and it really didn't seem that difficult to find us.
We retraced their steps and uncovered numerous errors in Mason and 2 other counties where similar citizen reports were filed with elections offices. We didn't find a single instance of fraud that had not already been detected by county elections workers.
Well, that wasn't the purpose of the report. And so you're right. The report didn't point out specific instances of fraud. The report brought up some questions that needed some follow-up.
But you're sowing doubt and fear in the minds of those people who are maybe trying to genuinely understand whether our elections are full and fair.
I think I'm trying to just provide people with information so they can draw their own conclusions. I'm not a fearmonger.
Dunkel has reached this conclusion about the elections office that he now leads in Mason County.
The people who work in this elections office do an amazing job, and their hearts and heads are absolutely in making sure that everything is done properly.
There's a lot of questions out there about our voting machines.
But Dunkel campaigned on election integrity reforms, and he's pushing ahead.
They're actually making pretty good progress today, Jen.
Construction is underway to make more room for citizen observers beyond the live cameras and glass wall that already allow visitors to view ballot counting. Dunkel is arranging for citizen teams to monitor ballot manufacturing at the printer and sorting and mailing operations at the U.S. Post Office.
Where I have concerns is the points where we lose what I call chain of custody of the ballot.
And he'll support citizen canvassing teams that go door to door to check voter registration.
Now that I'm in this office, I want to work with our local voter research project team.
All this to fix a problem, election security, when there is no evidence that problem exists in Mason County.
Just because we haven't seen it doesn't mean that the potential for problems isn't there.
In last November's election, Dunkel installed a new ballot scanning machine, a larger public viewing area, and more surveillance cameras. His office did reject a higher number of voter signatures on ballots, but Dunkel says most of those are ironed out now. And Susanna, that's a story that, of course, will continue to follow into another important election year coming up in 2024.
Of course. You do such a great job of following up on all your investigations, and we are looking forward to continuing more of that work into the new year.
We do thank you for your trust in King 5 as we seek to hold those in power accountable and bring change for the better to our communities.
We'll be bringing you new results in 2024. As for now, thanks for watching and good night.